How's it going, Ryan?
Well, the intro music didn't play again, so nice job.
Didn't play?
Yeah, classic.
Are you kidding me? We were just sitting there for 20 seconds?
It's all good. We'll add it in post. It'll be fine.
We'll add it in post. All right. Sounds good. But welcome to week 20 of the Bad Beat and all. Oh my God, Bad Beat
Of
Bryce
the
and Ryan
all-in
Rock
podcast.
Wow, I'm just so nervous because our guest today is just so prestigious.
Hey, we've had a couple in a row now, Bryce. You got to start getting used to these,
Yeah, had some good ones. Trevor Savage, WinoPoker. Now we got
one
I'll
more.
let you introduce him.
Yeah, so this week we're excited to welcome yet another amazing guest to the podcast. Matt Vaughn is a name that's ringing more and more bells for people in the poker community. A rising star in the fast-growing poker vlogging community, Matt has enjoyed great success as he's grown his channel to over 17,000 subscribers. With over $200,000 in live tournament winnings, including a third-place finish this past March and an over $40,000 score in the Big Stack 2500 event in Bensalem, and a deep run 2 years ago in the $1,500 WSOP Monster Stack, Matt continues to build a reputation as a strong and consistent player. Without further ado, please welcome Matt to the All In Podcast. Hello.
My God, that is a fire intro.
He's known for them. He's very, very well known.
Yeah, I saw the Wino one. I was like, I don't know. I'm worried. Like, I don't know if my credentials are.
Man, you're up to snuff for sure. I did a lot of looking into. I actually found a really interesting interview that you did after you busted out of the $1,500 deep stack, where like you were in an interesting spot where you found yourself a cold four bet shoving nines out of the big blind, facing a 3-bet from the small blind, and you were like, "This is a standard play." And the guy who was interviewing was like, "You sure?" And you were like, "Yes, this is a standard play. I'll put my stack." But yeah, I mean, and nines is my favorite hand, so that one stuck with me.
Oh dear,
you can't fold nines.
Can't fold nines.
That's one of my biggest like spot hands ever of like a live hand. Like I think I think I ran it at one point like in an ICM calculator to try to figure out like how much money I had just torched, and it was like just like tens of thousands of dollars. I think it was like, I forget what exactly it was, but it was like 30 or 40 people left in the monster stack, and that was like one of the biggest years ever. And I was like, I just had to. It was
like 6,500 entrants.
Just had to rip it. With,
play to win.
Yeah. Small blind woke up with kings and board ran out dry, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But I think in this situation,
there were some player reads going on or something there too, where he was like really active, and then I was like, I'm in good shape here, even if I get called. And then, I wasn't in good shape, but you live and learn.
Yeah, exactly.
But the first question we just like to ask people is a quite simple one. It's just, how exactly did you get started and learn the game of poker? What's your story?
I mean, I think, my story's probably been told 1,000 times or more in podcasts just like this one. I grew up sort of playing the game just with family on and off, and then I kind of came to the game like in high school, actually, a little bit. I played like free rolls on stars, like literally never deposited, but I ran up 0 to like 100 playing free rolls, and then heads up sit and goes like over and over and over again, and just always busted down. And I got tired of never winning more than $100 and gave it up, but then came back to it in college. I don't know why. I just like at some point rediscovered a poker book that I didn't remember I had when I like moved out to college, and started to really get into the strategy of the game. And from there, I was, it was post Black Friday then, so I really came up in an online environment that was post Black Friday. Just grinding micros and really being terrible, but like falling in love with the strategy and like the kind of like the intellectual side of the game, I guess you could say. That really snowballed as I started like actually getting into more like paid training content. And I became a winner like mid college career type thing. I was probably like a sophomore when I first started winning at like 4 NL, and like moved up to 10 NL, and like that was such a big deal, right? Playing like for $10 stacks, and eventually I won across a decent sample at 25 NL, and I was shotting at 50 and 100 when the then Horseshoe Cleveland Casino opened, and I went to college in Cleveland. So like literally it was open for like 3 months before I turned 21. And then I was this junior, and that was basically my job. Like I just went there nonstop. I was probably putting in like 30 to 40 hours a week live on top of classes.
That's
Oh
tough.
gosh.
That's tough.
And to be clear, I had every like online player transitioning to live problem that is out there.
Now, wait, this is a big
terrible.
difference though between you and Trevor Savage, because we had Trevor Savage on last week, and he was telling us that he majored in political science expressly so he wouldn't have to show up to class and he could grind online. So for you, you did it on top of class, which I think is marginally more impressive.
It's funny, yeah. So I majored in physics. I started out double majoring in physics and music, and then I dropped the major down to a minor for music. I also minored in psychology, but I really liked school, so I was never going to be the guy who just like dropped school entirely for poker or like missed all his classes. So like I went to most of my classes, although I do admit that senior year I kind of let it drop a little bit. I was in a stats class. I was in a stats class where like I already knew a lot of the material, but like still I probably went to like 70% of the classes, which like it sounds like a joke to anybody who has skipped class before, because they're like 70%. Like that's we
both went to a small school, but we know.
But like I'm about as straight edge as they come. I like probably missed 2 days of high school ever.
Yep.
Like being sick. So I'm goody two shoes student over here.
Me
no
too.
problem with that.
My brother and sister both had detentions. I never got a detention. I was the good one.
Can't say the same, Ryan.
But speaking of your now growing poker career, just 2 weeks ago, you played Doug Polk 2-4 heads up, which is crazy to think about, that you've come from, playing poker in college, going on 5NL, and now you're playing Doug Polk. I mean, even so 2-4, it's still fun. So tell us a little bit about how you got that set up with Doug and how it went.
Yeah, so Ryan, it's funny you say like I've come so far, but really it's like how far has Doug fallen?
Wow, shots fired.
No, bang bang. No. Obviously I kid. For anybody who doesn't know, Doug Polk has like this upcoming grudge match, which I think is still an unannounced, undetermined TBD date against Daniel Negreanu. And so he's been retired for like 2 years now, 3 years, something like that from Heads Up.
I don't even know if it's that long. Yeah,
it's about 2,
who knows? But the poker player formerly known as one of the best Heads Up players in the world, Doug Polk. So he's like wants to get in volume basically, and he issued an at first pretty much open challenge to like almost anybody to play him at like 1-2 and 2-4 Heads Up no limit. And he was scheduling the matches at first. And just like people kept not showing up, kept like canceling last minute or just not showing up. And I was like, the hell, man, like if you set a date with Doug Polk,
you better
show up for Doug Polk.
What an opportunity. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was one of the early people to sort of like, just schedule it with him. And he was really cool over DMs. Like I just kind of retweeted his initial like blast out to the community, and I made a reply, and he just reached out, and we got it scheduled from there. And then when he started canceling all the matches, like he just kind of reached back out again to make sure that I was still good for my date and whatever. And I had told him I was planning, like I wanted to stream it. And so like, I think he knew I was a little more serious about it. And so we managed to keep the date. And so that was really good for me because I got to hype it up and put on what I think was a pretty good show for my viewers.
I didn't even notice that you were able to get the resolution issue resolved, because I know the live stream went out at like 320p, but now you're back up to 1080, which is great. So I'm going to go back and rewatch it in much better quality now.
Is it really back up? That's news to me.
Yeah, no, it's back. I literally clicked on it 5 minutes before because I was going to say like, the quality was rough, like make a joke about it, but it's back now. So that's a big no. Good. Glad I got to bring that one too.
How did it go? Were you guys playing multiple tables at a time? Was the internet pretty good? Yeah. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, so we played. The initial schedule was supposed to be 4 hours of 2-4 Heads Up no limit across 2 tables. Which, for context, by the way, guys, like I've never been a Heads Up player. I have when I started online, I was playing 6-max, but I have not played as a regular format less than 6-max poker at any point in my career. I put out a tweet that was something like, I have less than 5K hands of Heads Up no limit cash games under my belt.
This should be
lifetime.
fun.
So this will be great. No, but I put in a lot of work leading up to it. I just didn't want to be terrible, you know. Like I didn't think I was going to have an edge really going in, but I didn't want to just do completely awful things for heads up. So I did a fair bit of like off table work. So I built out my ranges for heads up play. I worked a little bit on my c betting strategy and sizing and stuff like that. And then I just put in a lot of hours like leading up to it. So I had like a month to prep or something, and I played probably, this won't sound like a lot, but for me it's a lot. I played probably like 20 hours of heads up in the month leading up, or something like that. And yeah, it honestly, like, I think it went fantastic. I felt like I played pretty well. I felt like I would, given how much I was interacting with chat, which was like, I had 300 live viewers for most of it compared to normally I have like 40. So it was a lot to handle. To do that and two table heads up is pretty good. And like for anybody who's like, two tables, who cares? It's like 2 tables heads up is probably equivalent to like 8 tables of full ring or something like that, maybe 10.
Absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I did end up getting pretty hardcore murdered in the 4-bet pots. And so I did lose the last hand of the match. Basically, we were like wrapping up, and he was like, "Can we like square up the buttons or whatever?" And so like we played a couple extra hands, and like of course I got stacked for like $500 on like effectively the last hand of the match. But yeah, I think I lost like $720, and honestly, for the price of admission, like I think I got to learn a fair bit about my heads up game against other strong players. It was a great viewing experience for people who got to tune in. I still have the replay up, and so overall, like, I couldn't really have asked for much more. If I had broken even with him, I'd be on like literally cloud 9. So -2 buy-ins is no big deal.
That's great.
Yeah, he definitely. I saw that he was pretty angry. I think he mentioned on Twitter. I think he tweeted out about it. A lot of people I follow on Instagram actually had the opportunity to play him, and I know like Landon Tice, I think, played him and took him for a few bucks or something. But that's just awesome. You had the opportunity to play someone who at once was considered the best no limit heads up poker player in the world. Yeah, and he only took it for 2 buy-ins in 4 hours.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
But I think it's funny because I was just talking. I met up with the poker guys recently virtually, and they kept like ribbing me because they were like, "How does it feel to be the only person who Doug Polk played heads up and lost?" Like, I'm the only one who lost. Like, if you look, he was on Joey Ingram's podcast recently, and he showed his graph from like his first 10K hands or whatever, or whatever, like first several matches, and he was down like $10,000 playing mostly like 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 4. Yeah. So.
But
do you think he's gonna win? Yeah. Do you think he's gonna win the match? I think that's going to be Bryce's question. Sorry to run him over, but do you think he's got it
against Negreanu?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people obviously asked about that, like in the stream, and everybody's but sort of wants to know everybody's opinion. I'm like, I mean, Negreanu definitely has resources, right? He can put in a lot of work in this period of time. He's got several months to prep, it sounds like, but like, I don't think across 25,000 hands or whatever the hell they're playing that Doug Polk's gonna lose at a very high frequency. Like, I still don't think like it's not 100%. Like, don't quote me on like he'll never lose, but like I would, in most matches like that, you'd probably think he doesn't have a massive edge against most online heads up no limit players, but like against Negreanu, I think he's got a pretty big edge, and I'd be really surprised to see him lose. It would definitely be an upset if he lost, which Negreanu doesn't let anybody forget.
Yes.
Very true. Yeah, I think both of us agree with that analysis.
I do.
I couldn't even tell you who I'm rooting for. If you asked me a week ago, I would say Negreanu. It's probably still Negreanu, but especially with the underdog arc. But, yeah, it should be fun to watch, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I root for anybody in these sorts of things anymore. It's like, they're both people I sort of like came up in poker, like watching and enjoying their content and them as players. And, I've actually met Negreanu in person, and he struck me as a cool guy then. Obviously, some online things have been a little more controversial in his past, whatever. But I still like them both. I don't particularly need either of them to have more of each other's dollars. I just think it'll be a fun match.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I'm excited to watch. So you're telling me you're not rooting for someone when it's Antonio Esfandiari versus Phil Hellmuth? You're not secretly rooting for Antonio.
I mean, listen, the main thing you root for is blood, right? That's the main thing people root for. And if you're rooting for blood, it has to be Hellmuth losing because nobody bleeds like that guy.
You want to see the steam. You just love it. You love it. I love how there are some commentators who, I mean, some commentating is done in post, but there are some live commentators who can just see it, who have played with him, and they're like, he's steaming. Here it comes. Here it comes. He folds the hand. This guy shows up here, Queen Jack offsuit, goes into one of his signature rants.
So fun to watch. But anyways, before this whole world ended, you were hosting Meetup games with Andrew Nemi, Brad Owen, Johnny Vibes, and previous all-in guest Trevor Savage. How did you create those connections with those other vloggers?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Like, obviously the poker vlogging world went from mostly one guy plus like Trooper's been around forever, but he didn't really blow up. And so it was like Andrew kind of started it, and then like there was a mini boom, I would say, and then an extended boom. So like the guys who were in the mini boom all for sure got a massive leg up in terms of like getting started, getting subscribers and whatever. I absolutely got to ride on Andrew and Brad's coattails to some extent. And so I think that like just being a first mover, I was somebody who was just kind of around the periphery of their knowledge of like who existed in this space. And obviously I knew about them. I'm trying to think of how we even got like connected personally though the first time. I mean, we definitely had interactions over social media, definitely interacting on like their YouTube channels or my YouTube channel. But that's one of the amazing things about poker, and especially poker in like today's day and age of like I'm Joe Schmo poker player. Like I'm not really people like, oh, Matt has a poker vlog, but it's like I'm not anybody in poker from like the broader perspective, like the bigger picture perspective. So I can like reach out to Doug Polk and like we can play heads up, or like I get to play with Negreanu in a WSOP event or whatever. So like I think poker is really great for that, and it's also great for making these networks. And I think that the poker vlogger sort of like mini boom or whatever is kind of unique in the sense that like we kind of married this world of poker with content creation, and it's a very unique place to exist in, and most people who are not content creators don't really get it. And I'm sure you guys get this as far as like having some interactions with people on your channel, but there's a whole kinds of challenges associated with it. And so I think it's only natural for the people who have this experience to kind of like band together, reach out. None of us really saw this as like a competition. Nobody was ever like, oh shit, like I gotta beat Andrew at like being the vlogger guy. Nobody really like had that. And you even see like Brad and Andrew now like are basically teamed up. It's basically they're like
right now together.
Yeah, one duo, right? And so I mean, like as far as how those connections happened, I think they just kind of happened sort of organically over time through these online interactions, and they kind of just turn into like, hey, you get like they're trying to fill a lineup on Live at the Bike. So I was like kind of just fortunate enough in that to be like, again, in that kind of like second or third tier down, but like enough to be on the periphery and kind of be able to make
pick up those spots. Right. And, all it takes is being on one or two streams, you're getting mentioned there, and things start expanding. One of our previous podcast guests has a much smaller poker vlog, and he's been growing his really substantially over the last few weeks, where he's jumped from like a couple hundred to over 1,000 views recently, just from being mentioned on a couple live streams. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool for him.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the nice things about something like content creation on YouTube, especially, is like you don't have to be somebody to grow. If you put out quality content, if you put out something that people connect with, the algorithm on YouTube is actually like, people give it shit all the time, but like it's actually pretty good at rewarding content that makes people stick around. And so like you can grow in leaps and bounds if you put in the work and the consistency.
Right. And you've commented on it before. There are some people who just jump in there and like, oh, these clickbait titles and stuff, and you're just like, it's part of the algorithm. It's like, look, I have to do what I have to do to get you here. And then once you're here, like, the content's great. You stick here for the content. You didn't come, I guess you may have clicked on the video because of the title. But like, Don't get mad if this isn't the most amazing play you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I've gotten more criticism for clickbait very recently, like in the last several videos, and I definitely agree that like I've been pushing it more lately than before, and it's partially because like I just haven't been uploading that much, and I want to like get that ball rolling again. I want to like get that consistency back because it's very hard to take an extended break from YouTube and then come back and just like hit the ground running at the same speed. It's just not the way the algorithm works. It responds to highly consistent uploads. It responds to high levels of engagement on your content. And, you know, I'm not even playing live poker yet. So I'm trying to just kind of like keep the ball rolling until I do. And then can hopefully kind of start pumping out what my viewership is really looking for, which is more of that like live poker content.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing because, you know, in talking about this community in general, this year, actually 2020, we had the first ever Global Poker Awards. You know, first time we put streamers and content creators out front, honored them for their contributions to the community. Obviously, your name is rising in this community. Do you see that as a goal for you in the next few years to, you know, maybe get nominated and go? And where do you think the future of the content creation is going
now? You know, anytime you start talking about, I guess, like accolades, it's a little bit tricky because I never set out for that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I wouldn't love to be nominated and love the experience of going there and, you know, just being a part of something like that. But I have also seen, not from my like own perspective, but just like through other people, that there's a lot of flaws in how those awards get, you know, first of all, the nomination process is kind of weird. And how they get voted and whatever. So like, you know, there's no perfect system, but it's far from a perfect system. And it's definitely not something I'm striving for. First of all, there are many, in my opinion, more deserving people than me to be nominated. And honestly, like a lot of people who have been up and comers since long after I started my channel. And I think who have either brought more talent or more skill to content creation, period, and deserve to grow faster and get those accolades before I would. So I'm not like going to ever sit here and say, oh, I think I should be whatever XYZ award. But yeah, would I love it? Of course I'd fucking love it. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, makes sense. Definitely a humble response. So I think one question that might be hard to answer in short is, how do you successfully balance poker with your work and life? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have a day job, right? If so, what is that? And have you considered making the full leap?
Yeah, so it's funny because like a lot of people ask some semblance of that question on my YouTube channel over the years. And when I first started the vlog, I technically still had like a legitimate full-time job, legitimate in the sense that I had a salary. It wasn't poker related. I went to it for at least 40 hours a week, etc. And basically very soon after starting the vlog, and this was actually one of the inspirations for having the vlog, I decided to leave that job and go not full-time poker playing, but full-time poker. So at that point, it was like right at the beginning of 2017, I started on with a training site called School of Cards, basically doing part-time work with them. It was largely like just content and like more technical mechanical type stuff rather than like being hands-on or actually making the content myself. I was like creating questions or whatever. And that just kind of spiraled into like, I wore so many hats with School of Cards over the years now that, you know, I kind of know this company in and out. It's hard to call it a full-time job because there are very few things that I do with School of Cards that I don't enjoy in some capacity. And it's all poker in some capacity as well. So that's my quote unquote day job. But, you know, I don't have like an office I go to. I work from home. I largely coach or interact with students as a big part of my role with School of Cards. And so it's, you know, that's my job, I guess, but it's also not really my job per se.
No,
as far as
that's cool.
Yeah. As far as balancing it though, balance has always been trouble for me in poker because like I have had an obsessive relationship with the game for a very long time, since long before I was with School of Cards and since before I had my previous job as well. So yeah, it's always been like ever since I started the vlog, I joke that I have 3 half-time jobs. I work half-time at School of Cards, I work half-time playing poker, and I work half-time on the vlog. Because really, I am spending a legitimate number of hours on each of them at any given time. But yeah, I mean, my hours have always fluctuated. I've never played more than 30 hours a week of poker, like consistently before, like over a short time period maybe, but never consistently. And I've also always made money at the game since, you know, becoming profitable and staying that way. But like, it's never been the lion's share of my income either. And that's sort of how I prefer it. I prefer this balance where like, I might not have to have the exact paycheck number that I'm going to get every month, but I also don't want it to be 100% variable either. And so I very much appreciate kind of having that balance. And even though YouTube doesn't pay me a lot of money, there's a lot of fulfillment that I get from content creation that doesn't necessarily come out of playing the game. This is something you hear a lot from like, especially some like old school content creators where like they talk about poker's like a little bit on the predatory side as far as like, okay, you're trying to like make friends with bad players and you're trying to create good spots for you, which means bad spots for other people. It's largely a zero sum or worse than zero sum game. And so, you know, it's not necessarily the most fulfilling pursuit to take other people's money for a living. And I get that. Now, I get a lot of my fulfillment out of the game from, like I said, the intellectual side and working on myself as a person rather than working at it from the angle of like, I'm hurting other people. Because I don't think I'm hurting other people. Most people who lose money at poker know they're losing money at poker and they do it recreationally. And that's also fine. There's nothing wrong with that either. But I know I'm getting really long-winded here, but I feel like I'm getting towards something good. So the real takeaway is like when you have something tangible at the end of the day that I can take away. I had this poker session and I created something out of it and I actually got to share it with people. And that act of sharing it kind of created something beneficial in their life, whether it is just entertainment or whether it is education or whether it is just like inspiration of something that they want to maybe do. Maybe they're like, you know, Micro's online player and they want to play live, or they play 1-2 and they want to play 2-5, or like whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of like positives that come out of that. And honestly, like these connections that I've made with people, both vloggers, but also just viewers, and getting to interact with so many different people on the internet is like, there's negatives to it, of course, but the positives for me have vastly outweighed the negatives. So.
I gotta let you tell one story. Can you tell Bryce and our viewers the 6 spade deck story?
Oh yeah,
that is crazy to me.
Yeah, so we had this meetup game, right, with Andrew Nimi and Johnny Vibes, Trevor Savage. I don't think I'm missing anybody, but there were some other like smaller content creators too who like just showed up basically from locally or regionally. And, you know, I was kind of like one of the smaller people from like a subscriber count, relatively speaking, on the docket. I was like, me and Trevor Savage were like in the mix there, but then it was like Johnny Vibes and Andrew Brad. Like, so, you know, way up there. Yeah. It's like, you can't, it doesn't go high enough to see them up there. But yeah, it was interesting because it was at my home casino of Maryland Live. And I went in feeling kind of like weird about it. I was like kind of imposter. Like I'm supposed to be this like famous person coming in, but like, I really don't feel like it. And a lot of people already know me there. So it was, you know, I felt a little bit mixed feelings about going in. So I went in and it was obviously an incredible experience. It's just like so much joy for the game going on in there. People coming in excited to see not just Andrew and Brad, but just like everybody. Because a lot of people watch a lot of poker vlogs. They don't just have like one creator who they watch. So it ended up being a really great experience. And I had one interaction with someone who watches my vlog in particular, where I had a little bit of a hint coming in that something funny might happen. But so they tweeted at like Live Poker Room. They were like, so will only Matt Vaughn's deck have extra 6 of spades, or will it be every deck? And of course, like if you don't watch my channel, it makes no sense. Like why? Who cares? 6 of spades. That's a card in the deck. Do I care? No. But there was a video I had like, I don't know, months earlier where there was a mistake in the graphics. So I had pocket 6s with one of the 6s. I had 8 6 of spades. It was 8 6 of spades, and I had the flop was like I don't know, ace, king, 6 with 2 spades. And instead of the 2 spades being the ace and the king, it was like the ace and the 6. Right. So of course, like, it's a very minor mistake. You can obviously figure out what's going on if you watch it, but people lost their minds, man. It was like absolute anarchy, total chaos. Everybody and their mother commented, Matt, did you know that there are 2 6 of spades in that graph? I'm like, yes, I did. Thank you. I pinned a comment, right, that said, I'm aware of this. Sorry, we'll fix it next time. You don't need to comment. But so now, like, people who are like long-term, followers of the vlog, like, find that hilarious, and they just like love to bring it up. And so this guy made that tweet, came to my table, and I don't even know if I can find it here. I know it's somewhere, but he hands me this deck of cards, right? Just like a standard bicycle deck of cards. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Like, first of all, people don't usually like hand me stuff, right? So
deck of cards.
That's cool, but like, why are you giving me a deck of cards? So, but he's standing there so expectantly that I'm like, okay, clearly there's something going on here, right? So I open the deck of cards, and I like, the jokers are still in there, so I like pull it all out, rifle past those, and there's a 6 of spades. I'm like, wait a minute, look at the next one. It's a 6 of spades, and I spread the deck, and it's all 6 of spades. It's literally 52 6 of spades.
That's so amazing. Put the jokers in there too, because he knew you were going to flick the jokers up first. That's so great. That's so
great. So that was like just one of those like above and beyond sort of moments that you kind of can't. I never could have ever made that up. and all of that positivity, like, out of a mistake that I made on a video that, like, at the time was kind of stressful for me. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, like,
all these people are commenting.
So that was amazing.
And I gotta say, so Bryce and I are looking to hopefully attending a live WSOP next year, and it's going to be our first time ever going. Do you have any advice for us as first timers in terms of A, what events to enter, and B, just in general, how you feel about WSOP and your experiences?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so when you're talking about like events, it really depends on what you're hoping to get out of it, I guess, because at the end of the day, like, WSOP has a lot of different events to suit a lot of bankrolls, a lot of game preferences, and what have you. So if you're on a more limited bankroll, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being around the Rio, but not playing necessarily straight up WSOP events. There are great side events that are very, very soft. There's single table satellites that are even softer. And even just being around the strip too. There are a lot of great events that are a little smaller. So, if you're not looking to play like a 2K event or like multiple 1.5Ks or 1Ks, there's lots of great events all summer long, basically. As far as great events for value that are WSOP events, though, you can't really go wrong with like the Monster Stack, with I'm trying to think of the main event obviously is like the one everybody raves about because it's just insanely, there's no 10K out there like it. So many people satellite in, and it really is an incredible experience just to play that tournament. But yeah, I mean, like, I would say any 1K or 1.5K is going to be a decent option as far as like how soft the field is compared to like the rake and whatever. But they have also been getting a little more gimmicky over the years as far as like, okay, we want an even smaller buy-in so that we can have even more people, so we can break the record of how many people registered this tournament, whatever. Okay. So, like if I play like the big 50, I don't go in, it's a $500 buy-in. I don't go in expecting to like final table it or anything, because that thing, you play down like 5% of the field on day one, so like you want to kind of like pay attention a little bit to the structure is, and just weigh like how much you care about how good the value is versus just like the experience, basically.
That's really good advice.
Yeah. The other thing is like, don't miss out on opportunities to just see and meet up with a bunch of cool people. Because, if you're like almost any other poker players I know who take the game somewhat seriously, you have contacts who you might not get to see on a regular basis, but you both go to the WSOP. And that's like, I can't really stress how valuable it is to just have those interactions and connections in a time when like you don't necessarily get to have those that often. And it's like, especially now, like during pandemic, I'm like, man, I miss it so much, because this is a time of year when like there are dozens of people who I enjoy spending time with who I just didn't get to see this year because there was no WSOP. But in the more positive spin of that is this is an opportunity that you might not get again that often or that frequently. And so, just make the most of it. Don't go out and get hammered every night, because then your poker's gonna suffer. But I think that if you're not going in being like, I have to make all the dollars and maximize every single moment of EV that I can, then you'll actually get more kind of like happiness out of the experience as well.
Okay. Don't overbook our
plus EV too, guys. So.
Yeah.
All right, but that wraps up the interview portion. But we'd love to go over one of your hands with Doug Polk. So I'll pull that up real quick.
Get that thing up here.
I had to pick a hand that made me look kind of good. Just fair warning.
You gotta.
Good hand. We get to say lots of cool poker terms like key blockers and stuff like that.
All right, so villain is Doug Polk. He raises to 9. Did he raise to 9 or was okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, he raises to 9.
And what are you thinking here with the queen 8 off?
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, like these spots aren't spots that I have to do a lot of thinking because I've already standardized my ranges off table. This shouldn't be a spot where I go, what should I really do here? This is just going to be like a standard defense spot for me, but just know that there is more thought that goes into it. It's just that I've already done that thought ahead of time, and now the thought, all I have to do is say, well, this is in my range, so I call.
What did you guys buy in for, out of curiosity? I see he's M811, so was it not a 1K buy-in?
Yeah, so these tables they're $2, $4, 100 big blind, min and max. So each table we were auto topping up to $400, but because we've now been playing for an hour or two, we've like stacked each other or whatever back and forth. We're each, somewhat deeper stacked here.
Makes sense. Okay, good to know. Also, Doug doesn't rake his heads up game, so that makes him a nice guy.
I was also saying, as we go through, obviously standard call here, but have you mapped those out using any particular software? Like I use Flopzilla specifically. Do you use a different one?
Yeah, so I for editing and for work stuff, I use an iMac, and I also happen to have a MacBook Pro computer. So most of my like computing power is Apple products, and so I use Poker Cruncher, which from a functional standpoint is highly similar to Flopzilla. It just has a very different look. But yeah, it's just a range calculator that you can do combo work in.
I love it. Cool.
Right, so the flop comes 7, 10 deuce, 2 hearts, and action is on Matt, and he makes a standard check, and Doug Doug bets half pot. So what are you thinking in this spot?
Yeah, so heads up is a format in which you don't have a lot of room to fold any piece. And it can be hard to transition from something like full ring, especially to heads up, because the ranges heads up are just so much wider pre-flop that if you're like, oh, well, normally I would only depend some X% of my range here or whatever, it's like that translates to a much weaker average holding. So my holding here effectively is queen high with a lot of backdoors. I have like a bajillion backdoor straight draws. I have a good backdoor flush draw. So I'm definitely not ever folding here. I would say like you could obviously go either way here between check raising and check calling. I think I kind of lean toward check raising a hand like this just because it has very good barrel potential. Right. I actually don't remember what I did in this hand, but I think I like a check raise quite a bit, barreling on basically any card that we pick up equity on and likely shutting down on any card we don't pick up equity on.
It makes a lot of sense because like half the deck on the turn is basically a good card for you. There's a lot of things that come in that give you straight draws. Obviously, any heart gives you a flush draw. And so those are kind of turn cards you're going to look to barrel. Are you going to look to lead or are you going to look to check raise on a turn like that?
So if we check raise flop and get called and the turn is a card that gives us equity, I'm not really going to look to check raise because when I check raise flop, I'm effectively polarizing my range to like very, very strong hands, some strong draws, and then weaker, much weaker hands like this that can pick up some equity, but aren't really anything on the flop.
Mm-hmm.
When he calls the check raise, a lot of times he's now has more of a condensed range that's basically not polarized. He's more merged into the middle of like the more showdownable hands. And I don't get any fold equity if he checks back, which I think a lot of his range will prefer to do on a lot of cards when I check raise check. So for the most part, I'm going to look to continue betting in a polarized manner and just use that to my advantage.
100%. Yeah, that makes sense. And Ryan, I think that's good advice for you. Just the sense that you have to widen your range so much. Like you folded ace king, you folded ace king against and one heads up match, so that I yelled at you for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. You had so much backdoor equity. Okay. Anyways, I like a check raise here too. Let's see what you do. You just decide on a flat. Turn gives you a backdoor gut shot.
Open-ended.
Oh, open-ended. Oh, yeah. Jack 6. That's not open-ended. Double gutter. Anyways,
7, 8, 9.
He bets pot. Pretty big bet. But now that you picked up a ton of equity, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I think if he makes a smaller bet, I'm a little more incentivized to now check raise turn for a lot of the reasons that check raising flop made sense. But when he decides to pot it, he's starting to polarize his range a little bit too. And a lot of the hands in my range don't really want to check raise versus range. He's uncapped in the sense that he can hold Jack 8, he can hold 10s, 9s, 7s, deuces, he can hold 10-9, he can hold 10-7. He can have really strong hands here. I can have some of them, but fewer now. And so at this point, like, I don't think a check raise versus this particular size makes a lot of sense. I think he's checking back a lot of like showdown hands if he's, or just choosing a smaller size than this. So we're not like, oh yeah, we just get to put him in a like crappy spot with like a weak 10. I don't think he plays a weak 10 like this all that often. So now I am pretty on board with just calling, but I'm certainly not folding because again, this hand still retains quite a bit of equity against the hands he could be doing this with.
100%.
That's really interesting. Okay.
Do we get there? We do not. So what are you thinking when you brick the sever? The 7's a pretty good card for you, is it not?
Yeah, so like the level 1 thinking is obviously I don't have anything. And so like it wouldn't be like the end of the world to just check fold here, for sure. But I think that while this card doesn't obviously help my hand, it helps a lot of hands in my range that would play exactly this way. So when I think about hands that I choose to check call twice and not put in a raise at any point, it's a lot of one pair hands. It's a lot of one pair plus draw hands. And then obviously like some of the draws that I choose not to play aggressively that now just aren't anything. But he still has, because he's been polarizing throughout this hand to the turn, he still has a lot of misdraws himself. He has like a lot of just ace highs that he's choosing to bluff rather than try to get to showdown. He has a lot that just misses. And he still has some of the strongest hands. Like he still has 10s, 7s, deuces, 9s, whatever. But he also has some hands that don't really like this run out. Like hands like ace 10 that he could play this way are like pretty annoyed. And I think I have an opportunity here to put him in a pretty bad spot with some of the weaker parts of his value range, and then also just any bluffs that
accidentally
any bluffs that beat me basically. So I decided to lead, and I think that if we're going to lead here, we have to go very large because we're representing basically trips or better. And for the most part, the only value hand I could play this way is probably trips. Yeah. I don't really see myself playing straights or boats or really anything else for value this way, but I have a lot of trips in range. I have there's a million 7x hands in my range because I'm defending, first of all, every suited 7 pre-flop and quite a lot of the offsuit ones as well, because the 7's an okay kicker, heads up. So like I have a bunch of 7s in range because I never fold flop or turn to this action. So basically I decided that I was going to overbet because I wanted to simultaneously get his bluffs to fold, but also get maybe a hand like a 10 to fold. The other thing is, like, if I just lead small, it doesn't really make sense because the hands in my range that want to value bet want to get more value and can get more value, so they would choose a larger size. And against someone like Doug Polk, you kind of reopen the door to get reaggressed if you go for small size here. Whereas if you overbet this spot, he's no longer incentivized to really raise anything except for like probably boats and maybe even only like 2/3 of the boats or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting thing. So when you come into a spot like this, and was this part of your strategy going in? Was this part of your lab work? I mean, obviously, you're not prepared for this exact situation, but was part of your lab work saying someone like Doug Polk is a person who I'm going to need to size up on rivers when I'm putting pressure on?
I think it's actually much less about the opponent tendencies than the fundamentals of the spot. And the fact that the main thing that's important about him as an opponent is that he is playing in a fundamentally sound manner first and foremost. And so the things he's doing line up with the range he's representing. And the way I'm approaching the game versus him is also going to be relatively fundamentally sound from like a pre-flop and flop perspective. Right. And so when I get to that spot, it's more so understanding like how our two ranges interact with each other and the board more than it is like, oh, I have to size up. I do also think that in general, I've been incorporating more overbets, period. And that was part of the work I did while playing heads up, was just experimenting a little bit more, because it wasn't something that was like in my game a lot live pre-pandemic. But as I've been playing a lot more volume online and whatnot, I've just been able to kind of like put more of that into play. And I think my thought process is a little more crisp just from playing way more hands and seeing way more opportunities where an overbet like could make sense, basically.
It's a lot of fun. I didn't really start implementing overbetting into my strategies until probably about 9 months, a year ago, and now I love it so much. It's a good time. You can get a lot of value.
Right.
But anyways, thank you for coming on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Really great having you, man.
Appreciate you talking about Polk, and look forward to potentially playing with you again once you come back to live poker. I'm sure.
Fingers crossed. I'll make a trip down.
30 minutes, but I'm sure you don't remember that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.
Right,
that's awesome.
Care, man. So we have 3 more hands for you guys. The next one is a viewer submission. It is 2-5 at the MGM National Harbor, my home casino. And here are notes that he's been here for about 30 minutes. He's 3-bet twice with ace-5 off and ace-king off, and both hands went to showdown. All right, so without further ado, let's pull up the screen.
People have seen that he's capable of 3-betting something other than aces, which anyone who's sitting at the table and is paying attention, as you should be, if you're playing. I mean, we haven't played live poker in a while. A lot of people haven't played live poker.
People 3-bet pretty light, actually, at MGM. In one.
Well, yeah,
but it's 2-5. This is 2-5.
2-5, yeah. But I'm saying, like, in general, whenever a hand is shown down, especially in live poker, it's so important. Always be paying attention. Don't be staring down at your phone when a showdown occurs, because you should always be able to pick up information off that action. Mm-hmm. But anyway, here we are, kings. Oh, hey, Matt. Wow, he's moving now. Crazy. So we're in a straddle. Actually, was this?
It's a straddle. Straddle's on.
It is a straddle pot.
So 2-5-10, and then seat 9 it made it 35, I believe.
Yes,
and we decided
35
to 125 on the button. Fairly large sizing. In position, I might elect to go a little smaller, but at the same time, people at MGM like to throw their money around. So I'm not going to complain about it at all.
I'll also say that because the straddles on were significantly less deep, we would have been 180 big blinds deep, and we're only 90 big blinds deep. So honestly, I actually kind of like the sizing, because when we go to this sizing here, we're putting ourselves in a position where, I mean, if the under the gun razors or under the gun 1, I guess whatever's above the straddle, should have a pretty strong range here, then they might be 4-betting us some percentage of the time. We're going to get some good value there.
So this is important to note. He said that seat 2 was a tight thinking player, and the loose aggressive was not afraid to bluff, but make some odd plays, and it's pretty fearless. So just take that into account when going into this hand. So the loose aggressive player decides on a flat, and the initial raiser folds. So we're going heads up to a flop.
It's also noted that the loose aggressive player tank flats, and that Hero thought because of his image that the loose aggressive player was thinking about putting in a 4-bet.
Interesting. Okay, so actions on the loose aggressive player, and let's see what he does.
Checks.
And he leads for 225. Wow, okay. Pretty big bet on this board that kind of smashes the caller's range. Obviously, kings are way too strong to fold, but not the best flop in the world, and I really see absolutely no merit in raising. I think you can even get a hand like ace-jack to fold, which obviously is pretty loose pre-flop to call, but ace-jack suited is potentially
well, that's the thing is
calling range.
When the loose aggressive player makes this bet, what are we supposed to be putting him on? He doesn't check to the aggressor here. He opts to lead into this pot here for 225, which is a pretty decent size.
It's a scary bet, 100%.
So it's not even just scary. I think it's just confusing because it's hard to put together a donk range in a 3-bet pot like this. He's just not supposed to be betting there with any of his range. So what could he have? So I agree. King's too strong to fold. I think you just have to put in a flat and see what
absolutely no merit in raising.
I don't think so.
We have less than pot behind. Brick on the turn, and let's see what the loose aggressive player does. And he checks the weirdest line. But
it's a blank.
Bet of 550, and he calls. Oh, we jammed. Okay.
We jam. I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of a pretty standard spot here, especially when the loose aggressive player.
I hate how he played queens. I hate it so much. You get a bet out of ace king on this flop. Like, you get a bet. Why would you bet with queens? Like, are you only specifically targeting like ace jack, like which on the button is a fine play? But
no. This loose aggressive player looked down at queens and was like, "Oh my god, I have queens," and was not. I don't think they were putting too much thought. And yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying is like, people are there at different points in time, but I would imagine loose aggressive player, based on the fact he like tanked for 2 minutes and like sat there and apparently was like stuck in the call. He was like, I can't fold. You can definitely fold queens to that line, buddy.
100%. I don't know. Yeah, he played that hand really, really weirdly. Anyways, let's pull up the next hand. We have 2 more to go for you guys. All right.
Viewer hand. This is a second viewer submission hand. 2 in a week. That's great. Keep sending these in, guys. We appreciate them. We like
we had more than that, buddy.
So I would also like to. It shows a straddle here, but this is actually a 5-5-10. So this is a 3-blind game. So just be aware that the straddle isn't a true straddle. It's actually is a third blind of $10. I think it's a great game. I think generally 3-blind games they incentivize more action. So
100%.
Obviously 5-5-10, we get an open from the cutoff to 50, which is interesting because also with the 3-blind setup, I think a raise to 50 is pretty standard. I would imagine that's probably the standard open at this table. And they're 5K deep. I mean, there's just no point in opening to anything smaller than $50. Yeah. So
I mean, C3 could have a very wide range here, obviously.
Cutoff open, big.
Yeah, huge range. But 10-7 hearts, pretty loose of a 3-bet. I like 10-8 of hearts way more, for obvious reasons. But
Bryce, that's an interesting point though. So it's a cutoff open. What's your 3-bet range supposed to be against a cutoff open from the button? I mean, is it supposed to be more linear than this? Or are you supposed to 3-bet like a 10-9 instead of a 10-7?
I mean, a 10-9 has way more equity than 10-7.
I agree.
But I mean, it's player dependent also. I mean, if we're strictly speaking, like, do you go off 100% a chart? I mean, it totally...
No. Yeah, exactly. You have to mix it up. You have to balance the range.
I mean, it's very player dependent, and I don't think we have notes on who this is.
No, we don't have notes on these players.
So if it's... it totally depends, you know what I mean? Like, I'm never doing this to you, but if, like, bot raises from C3, I'll mix it up sometimes. And, you know what I mean? It just depends on the competency and how loose the player is. But, I mean, 10-7 is a little loose of a raise. And going 3x, it looks like he's just trying to ISO and not get a ton of action. But I mean, I like a raise way more than a call. You never call here with 10-7 hearts and let other people go. So I can't roast it too much. It's okay. It's fine.
So folds to.
We go 3-way to a flop.
It's noted. Yeah. Okay. So Mega Rich Whale cold calls. Mega Rich Whale. That one's gonna be a mouthful to get out. The MRW.
I have not seen this hand yet. I don't know the result, but pretty good flop for the 7-10 of hearts.
Hey, and here's one of the things. So here's one of the things that it is a perk to this, and something that I think this hero would bring up. The fact of the matter is, if you're only opening 10-9 and stuff like that, you're never going to end up in a situation like this. To some degree, you do have to mix up your play so that you can end it. To some degree, you're going to end up in situations like this. 90% or not 90, a decent percentage of the time, you're just going to whiff with 10-7 in this 3-bet pot 3 ways. But when you hit your trip sevens, who is going to put you on 10-7 of hearts here? So with that in mind, action checks to our hero who bets 175 into 460, which I like.
Yeah,
175.
I like the sizing as well. You have to bet this against Mega Rich Whale. He'll call you with any single pair, probably 2 overs. The 6 is not a good card for you, but I mean, not the worst card in the world. You're so quality ahead here the vast majority of time. Let's see what Mega Rich Whale does.
Yeah, Mega Rich Whale has a lot of 8s and 9s.
Leads for 300, and we decide on a flat. I think a flat's fine. I think if you raise, you're probably only getting called by a better hand. And
yes.
Complete donkey. So yeah. Any further analysis you want to add, Ryan?
Yeah, you're never gonna get away from trips on that turn specifically. I don't know. I mean, like what rivers? Because if we don't, 90% of the time here, we aren't gonna boat up on the river. Are we just calling down on brick rivers here if he barrels a 3rd time? Or I'm sorry. Well, here's one of the interesting things is that we led flop and then he led turn and now he's leading turn now. So he check called flop and then decides to lead the turn.
Yeah,
which I think is interesting.
Definitely an interesting line. But you can't fold here to
no.
a whale. And we've got about a 1 SPR. River is not the best either. It brings in the backdoor flush draw, which obviously is possible. But I just don't see you folding here to anything, assuming this guy is just a complete whale. Checks to us. This is interesting. How do you size when it's checked to you? Because you're obviously committing yourself when you make a bet of this nature. What are you targeting is the question. Do you think a 6 bets turn? Do you think 2 overs just bets turn? If he has clubs, you're just screwed. Do you think he does this with a hand like 8-6? I think that's the most reasonable bluff candidate from Mega Rich Whale. Like, what hands are you putting him on? Unless you just think he's completely just donking off. Like, what hands do you put him on?
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I agree. I think, especially with a cutoff open and a button 3-bet, especially from like the 3rd blind, you'd expect him to be 3-betting a lot of his top end of his range because you have particularly wide ranges he can exploit. So I don't expect him to show up with overpairs of 10s and up here. Maybe 9s and 8s make this, but like again, that's still a pretty narrow range.
Yeah.
And I don't know about the bet of $800 here because we're only leaving us. I mean, we're betting 800 into 1400, and we're gonna leave us like only a couple hundred. I don't know. It's a tough way to size here because we basically have a 1-to-1 SPR.
Yeah, I think it's a really weird way to size.
I think if you go for the jam here, just based on the line, I don't think there's too much value. I don't think he's gonna snap you off with a flush. I think he's just gonna have to put you on the boat and fold.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's gonna, I believe, Mega Rich Whale complains, yells, heems and haws, sticks in the call, turns over 9-8.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, the king's a bad card for him, but is he just putting you on a boat? Like, how does a whale think about that? That's so interesting.
It is.
I don't like the river bet, I don't think. I just don't. Obviously a straight can't raise you, so maybe go really small, but what hands are calling you here? The only hands that make sense are like 8-6, 4-6 suited.
Is there an argument? Is there an argument, therefore, to check back river with trips here?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you might think, oh, if this guy's nutted, he's going to bet into me. But, like, he could 100% have the straights. You're really only targeting, like, 1 or 2 hands, like, that would bluff. this turn and I would even be in this hand.
And with an $800 sizing, those hands are just probably just going to lay it down anyway. Yeah. So I agree. You're not going to get much value. You're just going to get called bet better there. That's interesting. 100%. That's a really tough spot, though.
Yeah, I mean,
I can understand.
It's not the easiest. When you hit that hand, you're pretty happy against the way.
The flop's so good.
And then the turn is just atrocious.
Bad reverse correct. Hey, everyone has to deal with those crappy runouts.
So we've got one more hand for you guys. Wrap it up in the next few minutes. I do not know what's going on with that.
Well, that's okay. We're back. We're back.
A little bit. So this is the famous game versus I Hate Bombs, aka Sam. So the hero is me.
How many hours have you guys put in at this point? Now?
We've put in
guesstimate
20,000 hands.
20,000 hands, yeah.
Probably about 120 hours if I had to guess.
Yeah.
With just each other, something like
that. That makes sense. That's really decent
so
volume.
We've got 9s on the buttons. We 4x it, which has been our standard raise. He decides to make it 64. I'm just never folding this here. He raises. He 3-bets pretty wide. And
your 4-bet construction. I don't think we've been talking some more about heads up. I don't think your 4-bet construction should ever contain 9s. Really, just it's not a
especially
great
with
4-bet
this depth. If I was like 10,000 deep, maybe. Like a heads up. I'm just never 4-betting this.
Right. Yeah. There's an argument for like a polarized range. It depends upon the opponent too. But against this specific opponent, I much prefer the flop.
So Queen 8 Jack, not a great flop. 2 overs, got a flush draw. I don't have a spade. Yeah, so do what he does. He typically leads for half pot in this situation, so I expected him to do that.
Right.
He leads bigger than half pot. When he leads bigger than half pot, I don't love it, but I just don't know how I can't peel at least one. I expect most 9s to give me the best hand. Obviously, it's a 4-liner to a straight, but I don't know if he bets this big with a hand like Jack 10. He might, but yeah, I feel like I just have to peel one, reevaluate his turn sizing. I expect a fold to most turns, especially if it brings another over. I'm just getting rid of it.
Yeah, but that's fair.
Yeah, I just decided to peel, reevaluate, and there's 300 in the pot, and the turn is an 8. Which I actually think is an amazing card.
That's a great card.
And
you have all the 8s. Or you have more. We have significantly more.
When he bets half pot, I actually think this is just so incredibly polarizing. This is basically him telling me in my mind he has pocket queens, pocket jacks, or nothing. And that was just my read because I think he sizes bigger with aces. I think he sizes bigger with kings. I think he sizes pretty big with I don't know what he does with ace queen is the interesting thing, but I think he goes bigger because there's a flush draw out there and I just decide to flat the flop. What is he putting me on? I think I have a lot of flush draws. I think I have a decent amount of jacks, Jack 10 suited, ace jacks, things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, just based on his sizing, I think if he goes 175 or 200, I'm a lot more scared. I agree. I think his sizing of 150 makes this a fairly standard call. And yeah, I don't want to give away what he said about the hand, but I decided to call. What do you think, Ryan, about this call?
I don't disagree at all. I think, like you said, I agree with your analysis that the 8's a great card for us. I agree that if he was barreling flop, he's going to barrel turn with air here too, because he should show up with a lot of the queen and jack X that's stronger than your queen and jack X as the aggressor, not the caller. But I also agree that I think especially his flop sizing is a little suspect to me. The fact that he went 2/3 on the flop and now is going half on the turn.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. It's weird to try to construct like what would he do this with king, queen, ace, queen. I agree. It's already looking weird here on the turn.
100%. So let's see what happens on the river.
Hopefully a brick. Not a
river's a queen. And you might
Actually,
think this is a bad card, but I think this is a good card. Because I don't even think he can bet, like, aces or kings here. I could have, like, I just don't. I think the only thing he can bet here is a queen or if he's got just crazy cojones in 8, which I think sizes up on that turn. And he shouldn't have many 8s whatsoever. So he decides on a check, and I'm just not getting value from anything except maybe ace-king here, which I just do not feel like betting today. So let's take down the pot.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting argument. I mean, I guess if you were going to size to something to try to target like an ace-high type of hand,
He
What would
would
you
have to
bet?
put me on king 10 suited exactly, and I'd have to
Yeah, and
bet
that's the thing is like
a third pot. I have to
Isn't
bet
he
like
folding?
25% to 30% of the pot, and he might call.
and you're also then opening the door
yeah,
for him to kick you in with a race on a double paired board. No bueno.
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with the check back.
And he
6-4
said, damn nice call. Yeah, that shows why me calling pre-flop is obviously totally fine. And a 3-bet pot with 9s in position. Like, some people would be like,
he's 3-betting 6-4. Yeah. Oh, he's a 3-better.
Yeah, you gotta fold. No,
Oh,
absolutely
yeah.
not.
No.
But yeah, he said you have one of the worst blockers in the world because obviously I block one of the hands that I want him to be bluffing with. But at the same time, I don't have any spades, which is good. He could have 9 of spades or a spade in general in his hand.
Yes.
So yeah, while I have those anti-blockers, I think I played this hand fine. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I mean,
what if he barrels this river? What if he goes like? I mean, it's almost a $600 pot. I think
fold
if
to most of his bets.
Yeah. So it's an interesting argument of should he follow through there. I think 6-4 suited is probably one of the candidates that's best to like just follow through with your bluff here.
Yeah, but what does he think I'm just flatting turn with? A jack, and does he decide to target? I mean, it's a big pot, you know what I mean? And
right.
While this guy will play a decent amount of hands, 3-bet a little wide, he doesn't really like to bluff off in huge pots. So he normally always has some resemblance of value when he bets these rivers. He'll check raise bluff me, but he doesn't really normally bluff and lead out and bluff in these spots, which I think is interesting.
That's an interesting note. That was a cool spot, though. That's a really cool spot.
But yeah, that's all the hands we got for this week. A little longer of a podcast today, but we got some great words in.
Another good one.
And yeah, we're going to keep the great lineup of guests coming. Please continue to send your hands. Very much love every single one of those. Any closing thoughts?
Subscribe.
Yeah, smash that
like button.
Smash that like Send it to all your friends. But yeah, we got a tournament to get to. I believe you've been blinding out, kind sir. I went ahead and unregistered, but you've lost about 5% of your stack.
That's fun.
Not even 2%.
I don't care. Let's go run it up.
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
I see you guys.